Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Driveway Liberty Podcast, where Dan is just rapping away in the driveway.
All right, so
I ought to start recording the video. That's what I ought to do. God,
probably
boy.
would be helpful.
Man, we've been just running into all kinds of technical issues tonight. So,
well, we're trying to get used to this video thing, so
right.
It's new.
Yeah, man. I mean, we've got a little learning curve going on here, and we thought we had a solution for cleaner audio on the video, but never mind. You'll see what we got worked out later. But so what we got going on tonight, boys, or what y'all been up to?
All right, so since this is more of our evergreen, I did have a topic.
Right.
All right, and I think it will create a lot of discussion. So start with just kind of a simple yes or no. So I would say all of us consider ourselves Christians.
Yes.
Okay. Even though Dan's Catholic, we don't hold that against him.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then go back to one of our local races.
Yeah.
And you remember on election night, we were told that one of our local churches, which one of the candidates was a member of, was working phones, stuff like that to support that candidate.
Right.
And I think our initial reaction was, don't know how I feel about that. But I think that maybe I've had a change of heart in that.
Oh, yeah?
So another question, right, to kind of lay the groundwork here. I think we can at least say we're in some evil times, maybe demonic. There's some.
Yeah, we could say that
Yeah,
definitively.
Right, yeah. Pagan, so evil, demonic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're Christians. We're living in an evil time.
Right.
And in a local race, we had a church getting involved with a member, right, helping them. And I think if we are Christians and living in this time, we should encourage churches to get more involved in such a manner.
Well, didn't we talk on one of the casts how the issues we have in our society is based on the fact that our churches aren't doing their jobs?
Right. And if you read about our founding, right, it is based off Judeo-Christian principles.
Yes. Right.
But also, all of the founders were saying, hey, this republic only works if you've got an informed and a moral society.
Right.
Correct.
So I guess my question would be, what happens when you live in a town, say like Detroit, Michigan, where the predominant religion is Islam, is Islamic? Do we encourage that church to get involved in their local politics, or?
Yeah. Do you not believe in freedom of religion?
I do believe in freedom of religion.
Well, I will say that
at some point those things end up conflicting and butting.
I understand that. Look, what are the kind of the main hot button issues right now outside of economic stuff? Right, it's the transgender stuff.
Right.
It is
now
stuff
that's
with our
a
kids.
point that we could probably agree with Muslims.
So yeah, I mean, I think with any theistic religion, we're going to have the Venn diagram of what's going on right now and what should be, and versus how the society should work. It is almost, it's not a full circle, but it's pretty daggone close.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing this in Dearborn, Michigan.
Every circle is overlapping.
Right. I mean, we're seeing this in Dearborn, Michigan, where the Muslim community, very heavily Muslim community, and the Christian community are coming together about a lot of the LGBTQ stuff going on in the schools.
Right.
And they're teaming up. And you've got moms standing next to pastors.
Yeah.
And they're both giving speeches about this. So when you live in evil times, it creates strange bedfellows. So to that point, I agree. It's maybe as Christians, we don't feel that way, but do we feel would you say the same thing about Jews?
Well, I don't
think there's an issue with conflict. I mean, we live in a whole entire world.
So is it the atheists and agnostics that are all for this pedo stuff?
I mean, not 100%, but I don't think you can call yourself a true follower of Christ and then say that you were born in the wrong body.
No, I agree.
Right. If you believe that you were born as a sinner, but created in the image of God, then the trans agenda is completely counterintuitive to that.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the trans agenda basically is saying that God screwed up
Yes.
in creating
Right.
you.
Yeah, and apparently he had a rough go of it in the last 12 to 25 years.
I'll be honest with you. I think the trans agenda is complete bullshit. I think there's some mental illness that is going on there with a very small amount.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of this is culturally cultivated.
Yes.
And it's the cool in thing to do. And these people, once they discover the terrible things that they've done to their body when they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whenever that is, they are met with their lives. They're screwed.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're in worse shape mentally than when they started.
Right. So, and I have thought a lot about this, and I feel like as Christians, and I expressed some frustration with people that were saying that they prayed about it and were called by God to run for a certain seat.
Sure.
My frustration wasn't that. My frustration was biblically, when God's called, it's always go, and then there's and the and is the action item.
Yeah. Or go ye therefore and.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that was what I struggled with, was I wasn't hearing enough of what comes after the and.
Right.
Yeah, God called me to run for this office, and here's what I'm going to do when I get
Right.
there.
And here's what he told me. Yeah,
and literally what you
right.
said, what you're going to do when you get there is the same as every other candidate.
Right.
And so then my question becomes, if we think that, and okay, so churches, maybe they're getting more involved, right?
Yeah.
Do we as Christians and liberty-minded individuals, which I think should be one of the same,
Mm-hmm.
put more stock in a church, specifically if it's your church? So Dan, if your priest stood up and said, hey, this is such and such running for such and such position, I've prayed about it, I've talked with him, and I'm going to support him, and if you'd like to volunteer through the church to help support, should that not carry more weight?
Well, I guess it depends on your relationship with the church, the quality of the pastor or priest or whoever it is that is running that church, and because everybody's infallible. So
Correct.
You can have somebody who is a pastor at a church that doesn't have the same vision or direction for public office that you do.
Right.
So you're totally free to discount that.
Yeah. I'm
So
not saying
think
it's the determining factor, but
No,
I
I
think it
understand.
should carry some weight.
Well, it carries as much weight as the person who's expressing it carries. Whether
Yes.
that person is a true representation of the church,
Right.
the entire congregation, or if that person is, you understand what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
how you view that person as the leader of your church will determine
Okay.
how much stock you
So
give.
then,
because I can separate the religious part. I don't
Yes.
need the state to tell me
right.
that I need to separate religion from politics. I can separate it myself.
Yes.
But I don't think it needs to be separated. I think it's
No.
all a part of the human condition, and it should be a part of it. The issue is you can't have the state dictate what religion.
Right.
That's the whole purpose.
Right. The society should be strong enough to dictate that.
Yes.
You're not going to go to Iran and start a Southern Baptist church and have it start flourishing.
No.
For multiple reasons. But okay, but to the point of the pastor and whether or not you trust them or things like that, is that not a very clarifying moment? If just randomly, and I know your priest isn't this way, Dan, but hey, we're going to support this person, and it's a candidate that supports all the gender reassignment and puberty blockers and all that. Is that not clarifying to you that, hey, it's time to find another church?
Yeah, I would not be going to that church.
Right. So,
Right.
So to me, as liberty-minded individuals, I don't want to say it forces, but it encourages us to be in the right spot with the right worship family
Yes,
and the right leadership.
and to tell you that's the issue I'm having currently with my religion, because the leader of my religion is a fucking communist.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time justifying. Now, the Pope has no impact on how I view my religion. The current Pope has no impact, none whatsoever. But the things he does and says, I don't think he's a representation of what I believe.
Yeah. Well, and to the point of the specific example I brought up, where that church was working for a candidate that was a member.
Yeah.
You know, I did.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm technically a member there. We haven't attended in a while, but the Sunday after the Dobbs decision, where Roe v. Wade was overturned,
Yes.
it was like a 5-minute celebration to start the service that day.
Good.
They had announced a couple weeks before that they were going to wholly fund a new pregnancy resource center that's opening up in our county.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I see that this church is, on the issues that matter, seems to be headed in the right direction. The leadership seems to understand what time it is. As a matter of fact, I saw that pastor at the Ron DeSantis event that we went to at the brewery.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Was he drinking beer?
And he was not.
Oh, okay. About to say.
But it's non-denominational, so.
Nothing wrong with that. Have a beer.
So to me, that church is headed in the right direction, or at least the leadership, right? On some of these key issues. Now, some of this other stuff I haven't heard come up. I've been catching up on messages, trying to see. But if you're taking that stand on the abortion thing, my assumption is you're probably headed in the right direction on this transgender agenda, right? So to me, it's kind of eye-opening.
Right.
And so I thought a lot about it, and I know your dad's a pastor. I'm sure he'll have, if he listens, he'll have some thoughts on it.
Sure.
And I would love to hear them at some point, because I don't know what the line is, right?
Yeah.
Like, do I care what the church's tax policies are? No.
No, I mean, because I've gotten in debates with my own dad about render under Caesar what is his, and I'm like, well, Caesar's a damn crook at this point, and Caesar's going a little crazy, so Caesar is wanting us to render more than he needs. And of course, a lot of times that particular verse is taken a little bit out of context. Now, I'm not looking at it right now, and I just can't recall
it's also
how
been
it is, but
translated differently.
Sure.
Like I've read that Bible verse in the King James version, and then I read it in the modern English translation, and they substitute, I forget the verbiage in the King James, but they substitute that with the word government.
Well, yeah, all right. So I don't mean to get off on a theological tangent here.
Do it.
Well, I think
that's why I asked the question.
You brought up the King James version, and there's not a Greek or Hebrew word for James, and yet there are books of the Bible called James, thanks to that version of the Bible. And so I can't help but think that maybe certain things like render under Caesar may have been translated slightly differently than their original intent anyway. Now people are, purists will say, well, that's the divine inspired word of God. God inspired James to put that, name a book after himself. No, that's his narcissism, unfortunately. He may have been a God-fearing man, and he may have been a good Christian, but that is his narcissism. But it also begs the question, what else did he change to serve his own purposes, or have changed to serve his own purposes?
So, I thought a lot about when we had Lieutenant Colonel T-Bone on.
Yeah.
And, Ephesians 6:12, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against the authorities, powers, depending on, powers and principalities, whatever version you want to read, and to me, that verse sums up where we're at.
Yeah.
Like the stuff like this isn't the 90s where we were arguing over tax rates and I wasn't. I mean, I was fairly young in the night. Like how big the government should be, and this rate. I mean, we're talking about chopping up kids.
Yeah.
Or we're talking about ending life.
Well, and you get obviously none of us three would stay in a church where they're agreeing with that.
Right.
But you have to watch your church leaders just like you have to watch folks in government, because people will abuse power, and they get. I mean, Joel Osteen. I'm not slandering him, but he has not lived what I think would be biblical principles when he locked the door when it was flooding,
right,
and wouldn't let anybody in his church. That speaks volumes to me as to where his heart is as a pastor and as a Christian. He's a motivational speaker. That's what he is. However, he's doing it under the auspices that he's preaching spirituality and Christ's word, which no, he's taking things out of context, and he's feel good evangelism is what he is.
So, what I think, to the point of what if they, have the wrong policy for this. I think with the big macro stuff that we're facing in our culture now, that the church has to lead, and we have to have good leaders in our churches that are leading. Because honestly, that to me, that's not a political battle.
Right.
It's not a whether or not 12-year-olds should get puberty blockers and healthy breasts chopped off. That's not politics. Like that's an evil. Like that's a demonic type thing, and we have to encourage our spiritual leaders to take that stand.
Well, and we also have to find the root of where these children are being encouraged to do this.
Right.
I walked in. My daughter was on Discord, which I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's kind of a server where people can communicate. Usually it's about gaming, and other things. And she's, having a conversation with somebody on there, and they're on webcam. And it's a kid. So, it's what, as far as I can tell, is Predator. But at first glance, it was a little boy. And so a little while later, I let her get through with that. And then she walked in the kitchen. I said, "Who is that you're talking to?" She said, "That's Jax. He's been my friend on Discord and all of that." But I heard Jack's voice, and it sounded effeminate and very high pitched. And he looked to be a teenager. I said, "What is his biological gender?" And she said, "Well, he's a girl." I said, "Okay. Why are we referring to him in a masculine name? Why does he look like a little boy?"
Mm-hmm.
And she couldn't really explain that. She said, "Well, why does that bother you, Daddy?" I'm like, "Well, because it's playing pretend." I mean, and I won't go into the depths of the conversation, but
she at that moment's asking you to set aside reality.
Yeah. And that's, I'm not going to pretend that.
And she's at that moment, she's asking you to set aside the laws of nature, and nature's God.
Well, and she's like, "What's it matter? Why do you care?" I'm like, "Well, because you're sitting in there and you're my daughter and you're playing along. And you know what? Pretend was cool when you were 7 or 8 years old, but now you're 15, and now it's about time that we stop playing pretend." I mean, you can have a creative world, but the thing is, that's not just in my household; it's in the high schools here.
Sure,
and that is
it's everywhere.
And there's basically an acceptance that's kind of slipped in for us, for these kids, and we've got to find the root of that. And yes, that may very well be in the church, but it's. Well, I think it's more systemic and problematic. I hate using the word systemic.
Well, it's a societal issue.
I think some of the roots of that stem from, if you go back, the huge push on getting religion out of mainstream, out of politics, out of everything.
Yeah.
Once you get rid of religion, then you can ridicule it, which is the next step that they were doing. And now you're working outside of it.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately where we're at.
Well, I mean, the argument of, well, why should we not, she's nice. Why shouldn't we hang out with them? And why Why should we hurt their feelings? I mean, that's a sound Christian-based argument. We don't want to purposely set out to hurt somebody's feelings.
Sure.
But there again, we also don't want to contribute to the.
But also, it's not about hurting somebody's feelings, whereas it's about, hey, you're asking me to put aside my belief of the world and of the God I believe created this world.
Yeah.
That's the difference right there is if you, let's say you're just homosexual, I don't have to have any kind of different beliefs about how the world operates. It's just an innate thing. Sexual sin is sexual sin. Mm-hmm. But when you're coming to me and you're telling me that the God that I believe created you in his own image is now, you're saying, hey, he put me in the wrong body. Okay, well, now now we're at a different plane.
Right.
You're asking me to suspend reality to play
not
along
only
with
that,
what makes you
but
supposedly
faith.
feel better.
I mean, there's an asking of a suspension of faith too.
Well, they don't see God as having any part of this.
No.
They see themselves as God. That's the going back to the
but they don't believe that God
atheism.
put them in the wrong body. They think
they're
they're not going to call themselves an abnormality of nature, but you're not going to call yourself that, but that's what you are.
Right.
And whether nature created you or God created you, you're not right.
Yeah.
And I think the people who are truly not right need help.
Yes.
And by pretending that their abnormality is normal isn't helping.
Was it in our group where the video was shared where the woman was on stage at a university, and it was a woman, and the question was posed to her on this stage. It was a forum of some sort, like you see Ben Shapiro in and stuff like this. Do you think there are differences between men and women?
Yeah, I think I shared that.
Yeah.
And people got up and walked out.
Got out and lost their damn mind because the woman's like, look, average men are taller than most women. You know, their muscle mass is different, where fat, rests on your body is different. And these idiots got up and walked out because they are in a complete, suspension of belief.
Yeah, right. It's a suspension of reality. Right.
Yep.
It's a cult.
Right. There's very few asexual beings on this planet.
Right.
And especially when you get into mammals, there's no such thing as an asexual mammal.
Yep.
Okay. So male and female, and what if you just look at, well, why there might be a bunch of gay dolphins. I don't think so, because they keep they're everywhere.
They keep
clearly they're breeding quite well.
And they don't reason or suspend reality like human beings do. So the more evolved you are, the more you can fuck this whole thing up.
But for every other animal on Earth, it's about the continuation of the species.
Yes.
Right.
And it really is for us too.
It is for us as well. Mm-hmm. Okay. The more people, as more people have, we've been able to support more people on this earth, prosperity has grown.
Sure.
Yes.
Because who knows? Maybe that child that was aborted could solve cancer, or maybe that child. What if Henry Ford had been aborted? Yeah. Where would we be as a world?
Yep.
Like all these things that have happened over the years would have never happened. And if we get into this complete suspension of reality and go against the laws of nature, and nature is God, there's going to be a snapback at some point.
Sure.
And even if it's not a judgment from God necessarily, just a nature in and of itself is, because I assure you,
there's repercussions. There's results of the actions that you've taken.
Exactly. Well, I tell you what, guys, let's go ahead and get ready to take a break. For those of you watching this on video, if you want to see more video like this, you should tune in at 7:30 on Wednesdays.
Dan's
And,
commitment to just stare at his camera and
yeah.
just kind of cut his eyes.
Well,
yeah,
what I'm
he's
doing
just
is-
making faces
What
at
I'm
himself
doing is
over
I'm
here.
looking at your picture. When you're talking, Travis, I'm looking at your picture,
Right.
so I'm always
I know.
looking at the camera.
Yeah, there you
Isn't
go.
that
So-
what you're supposed to do?
By the way, I
don't
look
know.
great on camera.
I don't know. I can
it's
do the
phenomenal
profile.
angle.
So-
Glad we got these
I
cameras.
can talk
if
to
you like seeing the
way.
video, we can
I can
definitely
go
use
which
your
way.
support. Go to Driveway Liberty
Three-quarter
Pod.
profile.
Right.
Go to patreon.com /
Right.
Driveway Liberty Podcast or Driveway Liberty Podcast. And if you're a business and you'd like to get some exposure to liberty minded individuals, then go to the Driveway Liberty Podcast.com / advertise. We're going to take a break. This will be the end of this particular video. You can listen to the remainder of this on audio on anywhere you can find podcasts. So thanks so much, and we will see you guys on video later. We'll see you guys listen to audio right after this.
Hey, is your grill nasty? Is it missing some parts? Do you need a new grill? Well, give Dan the Grill Man a call. He is literally the best grill maintenance company on the Emerald Coast. Literally. Look him up on Facebook.com / Fresh and Clean Grill. That's Dan the Grill Man. Literally the best.